Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Well, today, boy, do we have a show for you. We are going to dive into, do we live in a simulation, the holographic universe theory and the quantum hologram. And so, for those of you who listen to my show, I often talk about things that expand our consciousness, that have us thinking outside of the box. And this is where we're going to go today with this show. So I have two guests with me. Guests who have actually been on my show before separately, but I thought, how fun would it be to bring them both on together to talk about this really fun topic. So I have Jessica Jones here with me today. She is also known as the Cryptid Huntress. She's a paranormal investigator and remote viewer based out of Georgia. She's the host of Spaced Out Radio's Off the Trails, and she has her own YouTube channel as well called The Cryptid Huntress. And Jess has been on my show before. We've talked about remote viewing, and I've been on her show several times, and we've also done some really neat targets. So welcome, Jessica. I'm excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Barry Littleton here with us today. And Barry is a medium, a near-death experiencer, a hypnotist, and an avid researcher of the unknown. He also has his own YouTube channel called Barry Littleton. And tell you what, guys, you need to check out his YouTube channel. It has a lot of information. And so Barry is going to bring a very unique perspective to the show today. So I am really thrilled to have you on the show with us today, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Appreciate you having me. Hello, Jessica. Good to see you both.
Barry? Good to see you again.
So the three of us this isn't our first rodeo talking about this stuff, right? So we've had our own shows and we've been on each other's shows, and we kind of talk about this stuff sitting around the campfire. If we were to meet in person, where we've got this virtual relationship here, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So the idea that our reality isn't entirely real is a theory that dates back to the beginning of human civilization. And many societies actually held the belief at some level that our human existence occurs in a state of illusion or even in a dream state. And so we may experience linear time, but we're actually experiencing a virtual reality experience. And all three of us have had experiences that could play into this role of the holographic universe. And so the way I kind of look at it is, say you're in a flat area and you're looking all the way out to the horizon, right? So you can see as far as your eye can see, and you can see as far as matter will show us. However, we know that there's a point beyond what we can see on that horizon, right? And so where the holographic theory comes into play, it's really where we know that there's other realities there, but we may not be able to physically see them. However, if we're in the right frequency or the right vibration, sometimes that happens, right? So I know that each of you have had situations where you've experienced a glitch in the matrix. And Jess, you even have a show called A Glitch in the Matrix. And I know I have too. So I want to talk about Dolores Cannon's Backdrop, people. I want to talk about different movies that have shown us this holographic universe and the quantum hologram. And I also want Barry to talk a little bit about the science behind it later on in the show, because I know that he is really in tune to all of that. He's done his research and he's got a valuable amount of information to share. So why don't we start off with you, Jess? Why don't you share a story where you have experienced a glitch in the matrix or backdrop people or holographic universe?
Yes, I've experienced all of that. And I really had one of those aha moments when I was doing a show one night with a wonderful man named Frank Jacob. Okay, he's a filmmaker and a documentarian. He lives in Germany now. But he came on my show at Spaced Out Radio, and we were talking about timeline shifts and CERN. It was the weekend before CERN was being turned back on. About 2 or 3 months ago, I guess. And we were talking about how we have a timeline split, okay, and how half of the people that I know have gone in one direction and the other half have gone in another direction. We're on totally different timelines. It's like I started noticing that we don't speak the same language anymore. It's like we don't hear each other anymore, and that's was a clear sign that something was off. Okay. This is not the same reality that I lived in. It's almost like I could tell that I've gone into a different timeline. Well, I was having some issues with people, really bringing me down about my shows and being very critical about things that I do, people that I don't know. Leaving bad comments and stuff. And I felt like it was almost like a force that was trying to stop me from doing what I was doing. And so Frank, we were talking about that, and Frank mentioned, are those people even real?
Yeah.
Okay. And that blew my mind, because here I am, I'm just a lonely little human here, having a human experience. And I have emotions, and I get upset, and I was letting myself get upset, worrying about what other people thought about me and stuff. And when he made that point as to, well, are those even humans? Are they even real? It could be like a computer program, trying to change what you're doing or stop you from doing what you're doing. It changed my life, Tanya. It really did, when he said that. So that was quite the glitch in the matrix there. So yeah.
And I've heard this concept called a frequency gap. It's basically, if someone is not on your frequency, all you hear is white noise, and you don't actually hear them talking. And what kind of came to my mind is on Charlie Brown, when the teacher's like, wah, 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 wah. I've actually had this experience happen to me. And I don't know if this is an actual concept of the glitch in the matrix, but it's like when you you start to work on expanding your frequency. I noticed when I lived in Daytona Beach, when I started working on my vibration, I would go to work and I would have cars literally pulling up to me and flipping me off. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And it was like very similar to how you had people commenting on your shows, trying to kind of lower your frequency or pull you back into the matrix. And so when we talk about the matrix, I started to, in my mind, rationalize them. Like when Neo started to wake up, from the matrix, recognizing that he was in a matrix. And then Mr. Smith, the guy in the black suit, the Mr. Smiths, I looked at them as those people that were commenting, on your show, or the people who were flipping me off. And I'm like, these Mr. Smiths in the matrix are actually coming in to literally try to not have you wake up, out of the matrix, out of the reality. So, Barry, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts when it comes to, when you start to awaken to this concept and then you start having all these things happen?
Sometimes I think for a lot of us, it seems like we're chasing after this stuff, chasing after the paranormal, after the metaphysical, but when reality, it's chasing us. You know what I mean? I think that's what's going on a lot. I find it fascinating to hear the reference that was just made about the Matrix and all that. I asked a question of Sophia Stewart, this person I used to associate with. She was on their show and talking about how that a lot of those scripts were actually stolen from her, which would be the Matrix also. Yeah. But she said something very interesting. She said she wrote the Terminator also, and that actually Neo was John Connor.
Ooh,
it's supposed to be the same
I
character.
chills.
Is what she said. Yeah, and I guess John Connor would be what happened outside Earth here, as far as the war with the machines. But what did they do cyber-wise and in cyberspace? And that's a whole nother thing. And I think that's really fascinating. It blew me away when she said that. I was like, wow, I never thought about it. That's taking it to another level, You mentioned these backdrop people.
Yes, let's talk about that.
The type of backdrop people and these non-playable characters that would be like these bots that you just dealt with, Jessica. One day I a while back, I started getting these insults on my YouTube channel from a Joe Schmo, and I blocked it, then another one, all these insults. And I wound up blocking like literally 60 Joe Schmoes. It took a lot of time. I was like, so how many of those were just bots or just insane people or both,
Yeah.
So I think we've got that part of it also, but then we've got also this, not just what Dolores Cannon talked about, but what I have seen that are inorganic beings, okay, that are in our field of awareness down here on Earth with us, sometimes Earth awareness, but when we actually see them, they look like for me, like sometimes you see energetically when you look at the form of a person, you see like either a type of a mushroom or a spear of a type, oval of a type, is the energy field that goes way beyond their body. But there's a general shape of people. But once you start seeing like that, you'll see other shapes, and especially crowds of people, like these pyramids or these X-looking things, and they're the plasma-looking things. They're different. They're different beings walking around here with us, inorganic beings. And they normally come in twos. Like I seen some on the bus station one day on a bus, but you know what? If you can see their energy, you see that. But cognitive dissonance wise, cognitive bias, they look just like a man and a woman sitting there.
So
you know what I
they
mean?
in our third dimensional reality, or are they in another frequency, Barry?
I believe they're here. They're inorganic beings here in our third dimensional world, but they're projecting things that are triggering our cognitive dissonance. And they do it all the time in the dreamscape. When we're in dreaming, they really come in a lot. And they often look like objects that are very obtuse in your field of awareness. Or also they come, the bad ones seem to come as your loved ones, and they'll torture you in your dreams. Your loved ones saying horrible stuff to you, starting these fights, what the heck? Getting your emotions to flare. Yes, there's inorganic beings feeding on you. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of really dealing with dreaming, and like something that was really hard for me, just seeing my hands and being able to focus my cognitive awareness around full cognitive transition of abilities. That's hard, okay? But once you can even do a little bit of that, you start realizing something, that you're in the middle of an electron impulse and a bunch of phantasmagorical images. So then you try to isolate what other energy generating beings and forms are in your field of awareness. Yeah. Whole other thing going on. Those are the ones that masquerade right in front of us, both there and here in the third dimension. So I'll shut up with it there.
And
a little bit left.
It reminds me of a movie set, because the experiences that I have had, it's almost like they're like cue the movie, cue the scene, and then I'll see someone walk by with their dog, and then I'll go do something and come back, and then the person is walking by the same way with their dog, and I'm like, did I just experience a glitch, in the Matrix? And so, this is where the Truman Show with Jim Carrey, and I'll give a brief overview of what the movie is about. Basically, Jim Carrey is born in a matrix. He's born in a domed reality. Okay. So he doesn't know any differently. He thinks that what he lives in is a reality. However, there is something outside of his reality that is producing it, directing it, everything that happens to Jim Carrey in the movie. So everything is scripted from the day he was born all the way through the time he realizes he's actually on a movie set. He's literally on a movie set that appears to be a matrix. Everything is, he's being programmed. He's being, told what to do. His whole reality is in existence because of someone else who's directing his reality. Well, then he realizes he's in this false simulation, this simulated reality, and he gets in a boat and he takes off and he finds the edge of the set and he breaks out of the set, and then his whole world changes. And I look at that as our awakening process. It's like we're kind of in this dome setting, we're in this scene, we're in this set, like a movie set, right? And then we have these moments of awakening, and then we start breaking through the dome. We start breaking through the matrix, right? But, my question is, when we talk about the matrix, I don't see it as one matrix. I see it as an infinite amount of matrices based upon our reality and our thoughts and our emotions and where we go. So what are your guys' thoughts about that?
When you say that, you mentioned that movie, it gave me a different reference from another movie, The Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Where they're in the movie of being in a movie, and then they're in a movie that they're in a movie. Yeah, it's kind of
Inception.
Weird like that.
Yeah. You're in a dream within a dream within a dream, and you're like, okay, when does this end? And where does this begin? And what's going on? And so, Jess, you were talking about how your son's favorite show is Free Guy, and
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds is one of my absolute favorite, actors. And so for those of you who have seen the movie Free Guy, that was very enlightening for me because it's very similar to the concept of the Matrix, of the Truman Show. They're all very similar, that they're living in a simulation. And then they wake up to the reality that they're in a simulation, and then they break out of the simulation. So we know that, it's part of universal law that they have to share things with us, right? What they're doing, what the elites are doing, or the powers that be who are kind of running our simulation. And so how best to do it than through movies, right? Because movies are ways that we can open ourselves up to, oh, that's not reality, but really, is it reality? So do you guys have any examples of things, of movies where this holographic, simulation comes into play that comes to mind for you guys?
Yeah. Well, I think it's also not only movies, I'm thinking video games as well. It's like, they call it programming for a reason, right? Like all the TV shows and everything that's on television, even on Netflix. Okay. And all those computer, internet, streaming sites, it's all for programming, and it's bigger than just us. There are algorithms now. It's almost like the Matrix has a tight hold on society now because it's all coming from computer programs and stuff like that, which are programs as well. So there's TV programs, computer programs, we're all programmed. And so it's all about busting out of that program and escaping the Matrix, of course. But yeah, every single television show, anything that you can watch is a part of programming, in my opinion. Case in point, all those murder shows that come on, we've talked about the First 48 before. I used to be my favorite show, or even these shows about serial killers that are on right now. It's programming the public. Okay. It's programming them to not only accept cannibalism and murder, but it puts people on a pedestal that have committed murder and homicides and things like that. It's making it okay in the back of their head, not necessarily okay, but lessening the severity of it.
It's numbing us, really.
It does.
It's numbing us to
programming. Yeah. It's just a weird, it's just, that's something that I've noticed is a very strong programming tool. And any kind of, gender stereotypes, I guess you could say, and home life stuff like mom and dad, and the families, you can just see things in commercials now, and you can see where the people who make the commercials and the TV shows are trying to guide us as a society.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, look back at the 50s and look back at the shows, Leave It to Beaver, some of the shows and the commercials, and now look at the shows and the commercials. You turn on Netflix and everything is a satanic ritual. I'm not going to lie. It's like every show on there has someone eating someone or blood or doing some ritual or whatnot. And you didn't see that stuff in the 50s, but what you saw in the 50s was very Stepford Wife-ish, very, man goes to work. I just watched Edward Scissorhands over the Halloween, weekend. That movie is very programmed. You see, they all leave, they have the same color cars, or they have different, pastel colored homes, and all the husbands leave at the same time. And then all the wives congregate to gossip. And then, but that's what I think about when I think of the 50s. It's like, you think about, and I look at that and I think, wow, that's when the Matrix was really intense. But then you look at us now with all of our technology and you're like, we're probably more in the Matrix than they even were in the 50s.
Yeah, it's been a progression there.
Leave It to Beaver. Warren Cleaver was doing his lawn, mowing his front lawn with the 3-piece suit on. Come on, that's... And and did Jude ever leave the kitchen? She ever take the apron? She ever take the apron off ever? She came out of school. She had the apron on, didn't she? Anyway,
with a nice dress and nice shoes with some heels on it, and with the apron.
But it's like, look at where we've come. But also, we talk about, the extraterrestrials and how that was really. People started to wake up back in the 50s, to the idea of, us not being alone, but then the Matrix shut that down really fast in the age of, Eisenhower and all of that. So it's like, you really can look back at the last 50 or so years and kind of see, where it's like, okay, the matrix, it'll expand a little bit, but then it's like, it restricts us and brings us back in. And, Jess, we've talked about the Mandela effect on your show before. And I think that falls into the computer simulation and, and how we're timeline hopping and how,
Well, what you just described was a time edit. The Mandela effect is so often called that, but really it's a time edit and a time shift. And you just described that. It's something similar to that, like you're going down the street and the house that's on the other side of the street's on the other side of the street all of a sudden, or it's just painted a different color when you know it wasn't the day before.
Or Chick-fil-A is spelled differently. Remember
that really gets you, doesn't it?
Like when I first moved to Spokane, I would go to the Starbucks and sit there with my computer and I would work on my website. I would do stuff. And I did this for like a year. I would go to the Starbucks. Well, then I moved over to Idaho and I went back over to that area and the Starbucks was nowhere to be seen. It was gone. There was a gym there. Well, I went into the gym and I asked the guy, when did this gym, was it built here? Because I used to come to the Starbucks. He looks at me all weird and he's like, this gym's been here for like 15 years. There's never been a Starbucks here. And I'm thinking, what just happened? So I personally experienced that time slip that you talk about, Barry. And it makes you feel like you're crazy because you're like, what just happened?
Let's go down the rabbit hole a little bit and tie this together, okay? When dealing with also the holographic universe, and it doesn't shock me at all that what his name, Michael Stephen Talbot, was like a lifelong experiencer that was a client of Bud Hopkins. Doesn't surprise me to hear that. But like tying this kind of into contact scenarios also, okay, and this type of a time edit technology, all right, and also virtual reality scenario technology, like I've been exposed to in experience, where actually physically this helmet is on my head and they're telling me it's for frame of reference. Our vibration is too different for you to have a frame of reference for the communication. Then they start warning me that this type of a virtual reality type of scenario technology has been used to deceive people by lower vibrational entities or creatures, beings. Okay, so that deals with another factor during our contact experiences, that we could be dealing with beings that aren't just capable of giving us holographic projections consciously through our optic nerves, but they also have technology that will assist them in doing this also, to where we can't know what's a hologram and what isn't. You start dealing with particle synthesis, and then you start having more physical type of holograms. Something like Star Trek represents quite a bit on the hologram, the holodeck. The holodeck, but except more things you could touch even more. That's kind of what you're dealing with there, and maybe a type of technology we haven't quite got yet. But when dealing with this virtual reality, that's very, very real, and we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, there's a new show on.
And when the presence of time technology also, that is a lot of that in the private sector that we don't hear about by humans like us. But sometimes when they're messing with this technology and it creates these, whatever it is, edits in the time stream that normally happen during high solar activity, okay, it creates within us as time sensitives like you two a type of deja vu effect. We start experiencing deja vu. So food for thought on that. Just two ways to kind of tie that together between the time technologies and the virtual reality holographic technologies. Food for thought.
So it's like, the question is, before we start waking up to this was obviously happening to us regularly. We just weren't consciously aware of it. And now we're becoming more consciously aware of it. Is that what you guys think is happening?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because with that comes also the ability to perceive with our third eye a different type of light. Like now we can like perceive like what's up to what they call dipole light, but then going on what like I saw that like my ECETI experience, or some of us have seen during our encounters, it's a type of thing they're calling quadrupole light or octopole light. And it's light that can only be perceived by our higher senses, like the third eye or the crown chakra, things of that nature, not by the physical eyes, because that's why I wonder how that, we'll talk about that later, how that whole thing out there, and nobody could see it. Why it was masked. And I kept standing out at this place looking at this holographic mountain and saying, well, this crap isn't what it appears to be in some way or another. Really messes with the psyche.
It does. And so my question is, do these ETs project a holographic image into the third dimension because they don't want to lower their frequency to physically manifest in the third dimension? Is that why they utilize this holographic technology?
Yes, but I think they do it through our pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they use for the actual wormhole itself. The vortex itself is the pineal gland, and they project through that into the outer world. Oh. So it's the same way that they do that. Some of the dark forces do that to influence our negative emotions. It's just a different level of this type of a contact that's going on right now, because we can't see what's around us with these multiple frequencies. Mm-hmm. And since our brain is like a tuning fork,
and most of our pineal glands are calcified because of all of the nonsense they've been giving us. Because I know Jess talks about that a lot on her show. Decalcify. You made a comment on the show the other night. I literally laughed out loud. I don't even remember what it was, but it was about the water. And it was just really funny.
I am a huge proponent of taking the fluoride out of your water. Okay. With a good water filter. I always talk about that. Yeah, with this holographic stuff that the ETs do. I mean, I've had contact with ETs before. I've seen them with my own eyes on several occasions, at least two main ones. And I've also had ghost experiences growing up, and I believe that those ghosts could have been ETs. So what they do, and even with the Bigfoots that we encounter out when we're doing research, they're able to do what we call a screen memory. Okay. So all of this is connected, in my opinion, right? So, because they can change the way you're viewing things. And you got to think, like, there's all this holographic technology that people use now, even for concerts. I mean, we may have a hologram president right now. I don't know. We could have all sorts of stuff. Could be holograms. Yeah, a little glitchy, but yeah, we don't know what we're seeing. We don't know what's real and what's not anymore. Okay. It's so easy to change our perception through using this holographic technology. And then to take it another step, what about cloning?
Yeah.
Okay. And these cloning factories, who's even real anymore? Or half the people out here, falling down. I mean, we see a bunch of videos of people glitching out and stuff. Are those robots? Are they real people? I mean, what's going on?
And I've seen that personally with my own eyes. I was at the grocery store one time talking to this person, and this woman went like, and her eyes were flickering. And I was like, I don't think she was real. I don't think she was human. And so, and I'm recognizing this clone stuff specifically with celebrities. Like, I was watching a show the other night called Big Sky, and there was a girl in it. And I thought, oh, that's the girl who's in Grey's Anatomy. And I texted my sister. She's like, that looks like her, but I'm not sure that's her. So then I started to research it, and I began to realize that there's a lot of celebrities that are in certain shows that now they have like a clone, or they have a doppelganger, or they have another actor or actress that looks exactly like them. And so I love to talk about the cloning stuff because I think it's going on. Wake up, it's going on, it's happening. I have had my entire life people tell me and my sister, you look exactly like someone that I know. And I'm thinking, how many clones do I have out there? Because this has happened to me my whole life. So Barry, what do you think about all of this and the cloning?
Well, one thing is, as far as the movies go, you have a lot of those actors like Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, that has a twin, and you just aren't aware of it, and then her twin is playing her. A lot of that when she's fighting herself, that's actually her twin. So that's the case in some time, or a fraternal twin that we don't know about, and you see them in a movie and you put the correlation. But as far as cloning goes, there's another thing that's called resurrection technology that a lot of contactees talk about, and it's different to what I've seen, but it different than the type of technology I've seen. But yet it's a thing that allows clone bodies to be drawn, certain devices that will try to lure immortal souls into these clone bodies, so that takes us into the theory of soul traps. Mm-hmm. So from what I've seen with the earthbound spirits I've dealt with too, it's a lot of this is when we come out of these bodies, it's like if you get a really good 8 or 9 hours sleep, where you go a little bit beyond REM, you know what I mean? You're deep.
Uh-huh.
And when that alarm goes off, you hit the button. But for I don't know, just like a minute, you're kind of just, oh, you know,
Or
then you
buzzing. I've
shake
had
it
that where
off.
I'm like this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you shake it off, you get up and go along with your day. But, you know, I think the death process is a lot like that. When it first hits us and we come out of these bodies for whatever reasons, especially according to trauma, you know, there's a great shock involved, and it takes a minute to associate and get our discernment going. And in that time, you've got others that can come and try to trick you before you fully wake up. That's when you've got to use your discernment, especially, and try to, you know, so it's things like that just to be aware of during the death process and during any of these beings that we encounter that are non-human. I mean, it's a trip when you're really in the presence. You two both know what it's like when you're truly in the presence of a non-human physically. It's not something you forget, and it's not something that's easy to deal with either.
Yeah.
You know,
so is an apparition a hologram?
In my opinion, the apparition is, I guess if you want to call it that, but to me, it's more a projection.
Okay.
And I think more of us able to perceive according to our level of psychic ability or psychic development, clairvoyance, you know, because every medium is a psychic, but every psychic is not a medium. So the way we interpret it is just different. Does that make sense? I kind of answer it.
Totally.
So I can't totally call it a hologram, a projection, but I guess it would fit both is probably the same, you know, but I think a lot of it has to do with our personal ability of perception as well.
Yeah, because it's like some people see apparitions and some people don't, but it could relate to the pineal gland as well, you know, how in tune your pineal gland is. Because I know the more I've been decalcifying mine, the more I'm seeing. The more shadow beings I'm seeing, the more of these backdrop people I'm seeing, the more of these apparitions I'm seeing. So, and I think for me, just decalcifying my pineal and healing those past regression aspects of myself, probably closing that aspect off, my clairvoyance, I am also beginning to tap more into my mediumship for sure.
What do the shadow beings you're seeing look like?
So I saw them for years when I worked in the hospital. It was just a dark image of a figure of a person, but I'm seeing them more now in my peripheral. It's like I'll be doing something and then I look, and then straight on, I'm like, oh, I don't see anything. But then I go about my business and then I see a shadow. And it's always in my peripheral. It's never.
You know why? The peripheral is in black and white. We don't think it is, but the peripheral is in black and white. Oh. That's why we can often see them like that. Now, question, sorry to interrupt you. Do you see the spiracles, the oval ones? Have you seen those?
Not like that I've recognized. I have seen what you're talking about, like the triangles and the, you know, around people. I've seen auras occasionally. Now, I'm not seeing this daily. It's not like every single person I see these things, but I am noticing I'm seeing it more frequently than I had in the past, for sure.
You seen that, man?
Mm-hmm. Have I seen what?
That, man?
No, not yet.
Oh, wow. I was talking to, I had a guest on my show, Jesus Payan, and he talked about the Hat Man. He's woken up in bed and there was a Hat Man in his room.
So like a hoodie.
Oh, it's like
that's a different one. That's a different one.
Oh, that's a
different
one.
The hoodie one's a different hoodie. You got the hoodies, and then you've got the Hat Man. I've seen the Hat Man, Jessica.
I have not seen the Hat Man.
A lot of people have seen the Hat Man. I've not seen him before. That I remember.
So is it a shadow being, or what is the Hat Man?
Oh, this to me looked like a person walking at the end of my street, but they were surrounded with it's kind of like some people, they just have a dark cloud around them. It was like that type of a deal. This individual, I mean, it didn't do anything to me, but I know that it wanted me to see it, to perceive it. So, and then that's the only time I'd seen that. But, we get these different inorganic beings that I've seen the ones that were more oval attack someone by attacking to the crown and elongated down to the sexual chakra and start pumping them with negative emotions, stinking thinking, so to speak, feeding on their aura and their energy in that way. So that's real serious, the amount of predators we have here and the different ways that they seem to manifest into our reality. It's this place.
Yeah. And so it's like is that all a part of the simulation? It's like, okay, are those projections of our thoughts or are those real, or, you know, what are those when we see a hat man or a shadow being or a backdrop? What is
inorganic beings? Inorganic beings. We so often think that all life is organic. We've got this life that's inorganic here, and the densities of this planet, there's a bunch of them, you know. So you've got those that can phase density close to us, and then once they do that, they start projecting things, that energy that mimics something that we'll understand, you know what I mean? Or we can't accept seeing what it actually is, and we need that cognitive dissonance bias to see something that we can understand for a frame of reference, so we don't freak out. You know what I mean? So it's easy, and then in their dreamscape, they can just use all that stuff, those phantasmagorical images, to influence us and appear anyway. You know, I think another good movie worth referencing is probably my favorite movie, Dreamscape, with Max von Sydow and Dennis Quaid. Do you remember that?
I have not seen that, but now it's on my list. So I'm going to watch it.
It'll shift you back to the 80s for a minute, early 80s, but it's a great movie. Great movie.
I feel like a lot of the good movies were back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I've been going back and watching them. There's so much disclosure and so much information in those movies that I used to watch as a kid. I mean, just the movie Labyrinth and, you know, all of those movies, you just go back, and Star Wars, Superman, Star Trek, all those movies. I was a huge fan of those, and now I know why. It was like kind of waking me up slowly as a kid, you know, to the actual reality that we're living in. There was Tron. Do you remember Tron? Tron was about virtual reality.
Yeah. Used to play that video game.
Yeah. So it's like, there's so much that kind of incorporates this, but Barry, I want you to tell your holographic mountain story, because I think that is like a really good, you know, kind of indication of, you know, what you perceived in that instance. And it wasn't just you, there was other people there, right? That experienced it too.
Just one other person. Yeah. I was at this, that ranch at Mount Adams, and it was about probably 2 a.m, and we were walking, me and this gentleman named Albert, younger than me. We were walking, we walked by this thing they call the Pleiadian Circle. And we're standing there talking, and I keep noticing this. At first, I thought it was Venus, okay, because it's very bright, but it's on the side of this pine tree. And he's talking, I keep watching it, and then it starts kind of moving, okay, indication there immediately. And finally, he says something, do you see it? And I say, yeah, actually, I've been watching it, and it moves to the other side of the tree as soon as we're talking about this. Then it moves out a little bit more and starts morphing. When it morphs, it becomes from one light into about 5, goes back vertically, then elongated and goes back, okay? This time, the gentleman is starting to kind of breathe heavy, that's standing there with me. This thing moves over to a mountain range on the side of Mount Adams, on the left side there, that is called the Sleeping Lady, okay? Because it looks like a woman kind of laying down. And this thing starts descending over the top peak, which is, I think, called Cat's Peak or something like that. And as it descends down, okay, it's bright, it goes out, goes down and goes out. Then after just a couple of seconds, it re-illuminates. And when I say it re-illuminates, I can see it through the mountain.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, okay, we're pretty high up in the mountains. I'm from the Midwest, and maybe the air has gotten to me or something. You know what I mean? And I must be seeing, my visual acuity must be off. And it actually went down in front of the mountain and then re-powered up and re-illuminated. But then it does it again. It goes out, it comes back on, it goes up above the mountain, and it does it again. Okay? And at this time, Albert is leaning over like a football player, breathing really hard. And I had to ask, what are you seeing? And he starts saying, it's got to be a trick. And I had to know, because this type of delusion, fortunately, is not shared. Okay. And he starts saying, this has got to be some sort of trick. This is some sort of hologram. I can see it through the mountain. And this went on for a little bit till it finally the mountain moved down a little bit more, then it just went out. It was gone.
Wow. And
this really, really, really threw me for a loop. Okay. It's one thing to sit here and talk about Stephen Talbert and the holographic universe and Star Trek. That's one thing, but to see this really pushed my boundaries of perception.
I think it's cool that someone else experienced it with you, Barry. So it wasn't like just you like shaking your head like, did I just experience that? Someone else was obviously experiencing it too.
Yeah, and that's what I want to know. So I started asking some quantum physicists and astrophysicists this light that I saw that projected this holographic thing. That's how I found out about quadrupole light, octopole light, and things like that. That are scientifically things they're starting to prove now because something was going on there. And I mean, to a point of where I even went, and I want to emphasize this to anybody: if you've had experience like that, do not be afraid to go sit down and let somebody professionally hypnotically regress you for that event. Don't let anybody tell you, oh no, don't do that. Who are they to tell you not to experiment and explore your own consciousness? They have no right when you've experienced something like that, because something like that happens. We get so much information on the superconscious and the subconscious level, the theta, the delta levels. We get a bunch of information transmitted on vibrations that we're consciously unaware of. So explore that, you know what I mean? Look into it. And I'll tell you, that whole range there next to SETI, oh, just said the name, sorry, is not what it appears to be. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. And that's in Western Washington. And I agree with you on the hypnosis, Barry, because you and I both provide hypnosis services. And I've regressed people that have had ET experiences, Sasquatch sightings, and if you have holographic experiences, I really do encourage you to not be afraid to have a hypnosis session. And I don't even really call it hypnosis. It's more just getting into that theta state and diving in there in a meditative state. And
yeah, you know what it's called? The totality of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. And what Jessica had mentioned earlier, she mentioned the screen memories. And I've had clients that we could get through the screen memories. They can put those up. But it's our subconsciousness, superconsciousness, it's our right. And there are ways to get through those screen memories. But you're right, Jessica, those screen memories are a big part of holographic technology and deception.
So is there a way other than hypnosis for us to get through the screen memories that either of you have been successful at?
I've heard things about NLP, neuralistic stuff helping with it. But in my personal opinion, it's not as effective as like cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy. I think that's where it's at. I think that's where we need to go. That makes us more of the totality of ourselves. It's so weird when you know how it is. You got somebody there like this, they're completely knocked out. They're like a flopper, what you would call them, but they're so alert cognitively and so on point. To the point, then you bring them back. It may take 10 minutes to emerge, and they sit there. Well, I don't think it worked.
Yeah. Or they're like, what just happened? And that's why I record my sessions so they can go back and listen for themselves, because especially when you're healing, I see that a lot with my EFT tapping practice. There'll be anxieties at 10, and then we get through the tapping, and then they're like, why am I here? Why did I schedule this session? And it's really funny because it's basically just reprogramming those neurons, those neural pathways. And so, and to take it to that next level of really diving deep and regressing yourself to that holographic experience, you're probably going to see it in a much more vibrant and more specific way than you would just even whether you dream about it or you even just talk about it. Because when you go into that, hypnotic state, you can just, you taste it, you smell it, you feel every sense, right?
You realize quantum entanglement's real,
exactly.
Everything.
Well,
Exactly.
and Tanya, also, that's what my team does. We're all trained in remote viewing. And so we speaking of hypnosis, okay, because there's certain types of modes of remote viewing, like enhanced remote viewing, you do get into theta. We can go and see what these holographic, memories are through remote viewing. I mean, that's kind of why we learned remote viewing, is because we were having ET experiences out in the field. We were doing Bigfoot field research. So now, were they really ET? Well, we've all looked into it, and so our team knows. It's all kind of between our team, but we're able to see that. So there are ways to get around it and find out what's really happening out there.
That's really cool, Jess. I didn't even really think about that you can remote view that and dive a little bit deeper. That's awesome. And see, there's so many ways. And I think it's getting into that theta state, because that's the sweet spot, and I do that practice myself, meditating and getting into the theta. And I can sense when my soul self or my higher self comes in and it's doing things and it's communicating with me and it's healing things within my third dimensional avatar, you know, and so we have those capabilities.
Man, I want to talk to y'all about something, and it's going to take us off a little bit, but I got to share this with somebody, and you are the two people to talk to this about. All right,
Let it rip.
and it's weird because I ran into a friend of mine that's very gifted, and they knew this. You've had an experience again, haven't you? I had another experience, all right, and I don't have those like that anymore as much. But this is what happens, all right. It's late at night, and I'm practicing this pranayama breath. Okay, don't laugh. It's called the dog breath. Okay,
I've heard of
you
it.
get
Yeah.
down on all fours, and you pat, and you stick your tongue out. And it's very bizarre looking, but man, it really is just takes to another level oxygen wise. Okay, I did this, and I'm sitting in my kitchen, and it's pretty much almost pitch black in there. It's very dark in there, right? And after that many breaths, you kind of just blissed out a little. And then all of a sudden I'm looking and the room is illuminated. And I'm sitting there and my body is drifting by. I look at it again, and I'm still in the kitchen, definitely. Close my eyes again, and the room's illuminated again. And then I start feeling the vibration. Okay, a vibration I felt with some of these craft.
Oh.
Okay, and then I become very aware as I start shifting my awareness around. I can see these beings standing to the right of me it's these, like almost one of the ships I've been on, it's these cubicle things it's like a standing station. There's like 3 or 4 of them right there, 3, I think. And they're viewing me. They're remote viewing me.
Like they knew you were going to do this.
And then when I start looking, I start really paying attention to them, and then they start looking at each other, and they start kind of panicking a little. Like, oh, he's caught us. And I'll tell you what exactly this felt like to me. There's a thing called a pure conscious craft, which actually materializes around us as contactees. And they do it through densities. They like pulse into this density and materialize around us. And then consciously, it's all symbiotically going on before they even become physically. But I think these individuals only went to a certain density and have been remote viewing me. And I think they're doing it all the time. And I started realizing that watching how y'all do it and all this, when dealing with galactic trade routes and galactic communication, we did not just be doing it by light, but I think it's done by remote viewing by all these advanced civilizations.
That's probably why we're good at it, Jess.
Yeah, especially because, I couldn't accept that sometimes you have this experience and you're thinking like a whole civilization, a whole federation is stopping what it's doing to communicate with just you. Millions of beings, maybe. You don't think that's possible. That's exactly what's going on. And sometimes we're dealing with this at a higher conscious level with these type 4, type 5 civilizations. We're talking about, sorry, I'm getting excited.
No,
we're talking about the quantum hologram, which we didn't really go into. I'll breach it real quick, okay? Yeah. The quantum hologram and also the Akashic records. Let's just tie all that together. And with what we wouldn't think would be connected, which is black holes. Black holes, which actually people like Rudy Shields are calling MACOs, magnetically eternally collapsing objects, which actually are somewhat more luminous than we think. And it's not just that they pull everything into the black hole is crushed, like we were told when I was a kid. It's actually everything that goes into the black hole creates an exact copy is created on the surface, okay, of this MACO thing. And that's actually wrapped around the black hole like the accretion disk. So that's actually the hard drive of the universe. This storing of the universe, what we hear about the Akashic records. Now, the way that these black holes actually function, the way they actually function, though, is more like brain waves. And the conscious waves from our creator come in 2 ways, spherical and helical, okay? And spherical is especially important in this universe based on what we see, the spin, based on universes, based on the electron, all the way up to galaxies, to the solar systems. Everything's kind of based on the spin for the most part, right? So that takes us into this, something in our bodies that are called microtubules. Mm-hmm. And the microtubules for this one, let's regulate this to the brain. And the brain has something called mirror neurons. And the mirror neurons function just like what I just described as this quantum hologram. As I'm telling you this story of contact, you're seeing it. Okay, you're living it. That's just mirror neuron networks that's doing that. That's the same as a quantum hologram. So when dealing with these MACOs, how will we access them? Do we get on the Enterprise and take 100 years to get there at warp 10 even? No, we're going to access it consciously through the brain waves. This got me to asking people like Rudy Shields, these other scientists, well, how fast do you think the speed of thought is? And they gave me some sort of experiment that was ready to double something, and they think it's somewhere around 100,000 times the speed of light.
Wow.
So that's going to be almost instant.
Telepathy. Boom,
yeah,
boom.
And what's weird about the microtubules I mentioned and the mirror neuron network, the microtubules of the brain occur in two ways, spherical and helical. Mm-hmm. So we can interpret that information from the MACOs. I'm only bringing this up because it's so popular in New Age right now. Oh, it's the Akashic Records.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah. It's almost become almost a cheesy thing I hear is metaphorical in a way, but really, truly, what is that? Based on when Edgar Casey's the first one I ever heard say it. Mm-hmm. And it was the records of time and space. How? What? Well, we just know something now. And what I just said is based on data they're collecting from these observatories about black holes.
That's
not just
awesome.
me talking. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Thanks for letting me say that. So and I think that goes into the hologram. And sorry, one thing. This accretion disk, okay, and everything that goes in. When we start dealing with type 4, type 5 civilization, as they're calling them now, which means that when you get to that level, like right now, we're type 0, we're using fossil fuels. Type 1 means our primary power source will be our star, our sun. And then when you start going into 3s and 4s, they start using space and the fabric of space as their power source. So a MACO would be a prime way. So they're utilizing that. That means they're using the quantum hologram, becoming a part of it. So my friends, I'll shut up, but some of these civilizations may no longer be in existence, especially the way we're seeing things, but they still would exist within the quantum hologram and the MACO and can interact with us through the divine field in our brains and our brain frequency and the microtubules. That's why it's so important that we don't just get completely inundated with reptilians, grays, anal probes, all this orbits, SSP. Not that that doesn't exist. And I feel for those that's happened to them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us that have a different type of contact when I'm talking about, but we're strong enough through free will to bend that and actually change it to a negative encounter. You can be having higher beings maybe communicating with you for the divine field, but you're so tripped out and entrenched with all this other stuff, you're making that and morphing that into the reality you're living.
Absolutely. You're physically manifesting that reality. Absolutely. Based off of your thoughts around it. So if you've been programmed to fear grays since the day you were born, and then you see a gray, you're naturally going to be in a fearful state. But if you've never even heard of one and you've never even been subject to one, and then you are in the presence of one, I think of like a child. When a child interacts with, a being, usually they're in a state of awe, or they're in a state of curiosity, where us as adults, maybe we've been programmed to fear that. And so, Jess, you and Barry, you talked about how they're watching us remote viewing. Well, when Jessica and I did the remote viewing of the Dark Pyramid in Alaska, I actually was seen and I buzzed out of that. I was like, oh, like I had actually gotten caught being in there. And I think you've had those experiences too, Jessica, where you've done a remote viewing and you're like, I can sense that someone knows I'm here.
Yeah. Well, I oftentimes remote view Bigfoots, okay, and ETs too, things like that, any kind of paranormal attacks and stuff. I look into those things, and I am detected sometimes in those environments. So
we need cloaks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And going back to the manifesting as well, we talk about the fear and the programming of fear. And if you think about it, we are pumped full of fear all day long and all night as we sleep. I swear we're pumped full of fear. And so that's what people are manifesting is fear. Mm-hmm. And they do everything out of fear. And panic mode and all that kind of stuff. So that's something that I realized when I was busting out of the matrix was to stop living in fear.
Yeah.
And just to go with the flow. And it is what it is. Those are all my quotes and my my mottos now, is just to, you know, I'm not going to live in fear anymore. Whatever happens, we deal with it when it comes. Okay.
It is. And
yeah.
I even started to question when I started waking up. I was at 3 a.m, diving into Dolores Cannon's work. I was researching extraterrestrials. I mean, I was just rabbit holing it all night while I was going to a 9-to-5 job, and I was exhausted at work. And, you know, but I started to recognize my fears were coming up, that if I click on this website, the men in black are going to show up at my doorstep. Or, you know, I just was having these kind of more because it was things I was looking at were clearly not things that the men in black were going to show up at my doorstep. But that was my unrealistic programming that, you know, just watching even the subconscious or subliminals, like the movie Men in Black. Here come the men in black. Here come the men in black. That's what they're, and you sing that song over and over and over. So you naturally will subconsciously program that into your mind. They made a song out of it. They made a tune out of it. They made a movie out of it. So it's just naturally, you know, part of that matrix programming, that anytime you think outside of the box, or you start to explore things that are outside of the matrix, we will naturally in the beginning have a fear of whatever we've been programmed to have a fear of, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the songs on the radio today. Do you ever notice that if you listen to an actual radio station, it's the same songs over and over and over again by the same, like 5 artists, okay?
Yeah.
Like in rotation. What is in those songs that they're trying to program people with? That's my question.
And there's a Zac Brown band song that I hear it all the time. And it's like, and we don't have a lot of money, and we don't have a lot of money. It says that like 50 times, like in the song. So it's almost like it's programming a lack, you know, kind of program within the system. And then when you sing it and you have emotion behind it, you're literally manifesting when you sing a song. So just be more aware of what you're singing and what you're tuning into. And that was just one example of a song that I would listen to it. And I'm like, I'm going to stop listening to this song because it's kind of pulling me out of, you know, I'm actually manifesting that I don't have a lot of money.
Exactly. I have noticed that same thing. And a lot of the songs, when I turn on the radio, you can't even listen to it because it's so vulgar. Especially with a lot of the rap songs today, because I like rap. I like every kind of music, and it's all about sex and drugs and just mostly sex. Very vulgar stuff.
And that's where they harvest our product.
I grew up on NWA. Okay. So I know like it had a lot of cussing and gang stuff in it, but now it's just like vulgar sex stuff. And it's stuff like, it makes me not even blush. It makes me kind of sick hearing it.
Yeah.
It's just highly inappropriate in my opinion. And I am no, you know, I am no one to talk like that because, you know, I've had a fun life and I've had, you know, I am not a prude. Let's just put it that way. Okay. When it comes to cussing and all that kind of stuff and having fun or whatever, but it's bad. It's gotten really bad in my opinion. So
yeah. And I have a hard time just because of the frequencies, because I listen to solfeggios all day, you know, and then I'll turn on the radio and it's like, it doesn't feel in tune to my body. So I struggle with that too.
It's come a long way since when I walked out of my house one day, and I was listening to Electric Avenue. I walked out, and everything was lit up for just a second. You know, I was on Electric Avenue. I guess we've come a long way since that, huh?
I like the 80s music. I go back to that, and I can jam out to that stuff.
That's a great song, too. I like that. I think I did a jazz dance to that when I was in jazz class in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, did some jazz class? That's cool. That's cool.
Jazz hands. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
That's funny. Well, listen, guys, I think we've touched on a whole lot of topics in this show, and the time has just flown by. And I've really enjoyed this. And I know we're probably just barely touching the surface. I know Barry has so much more information. But Barry, tell us, where can people find you? Where can they find your videos? Where can they learn more?
A good place is YouTube. I'm on YouTube and Patreon. Most of my work is on YouTube under Barry Littleton. I don't even have a cool handle. I should probably get one. I'm also on Facebook and on Instagram under Barry Littleton. I try to do a little communicating there as well. And I have a website, barrylittleton.com, that's in need of some restructuring, but there's still some links there. So.
Awesome. And how about you, Jess? Where can people reach out to you? Where can they listen to all your awesome shows?
Oh, thank you. Well, you can find most of my stuff at thecryptidhuntress.com. And I also have a really cool YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram at The Cryptid Huntress, and at _Jessica. I actually have a show on Spaced Out Radio every weekend called Off the Trails, where I bring in Bigfoot field researchers and just any kind of paranormal, experiencer and all that kind of stuff. It's a fun show. I've had both of y'all on there, and I've had Barry on there about, I don't know how many times. I've had both of y'all on my remote viewing shows. I actually have a remote viewing show. I just actually retired my one remote viewing show, and I might be starting another one here pretty soon. So you'll be seeing more of that. And also I'm on Twitter at Huntress Jessica on there, if anybody would like to follow me there. And on Facebook, Jessica the Cryptid Huntress. I think I covered it all. Okay.
Yes. And check out both of their shows, both of their channels, because if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you'll have a good time. You've got plenty of content between Barry and Jessica to spend many hours, learning and exploring and expanding your consciousness. So I appreciate both of you for coming on the show today and just having this really fun, expanding conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having us. This has been a blast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the emotion code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.